President Donald Trump's executive order denying U.S. citizenship to the children of parents living in the country illegally has hit a wall. A federal judge pausing the order, citing a constitutional amendment that says anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically an American citizen. Lee Waldman reports from New York.
Birthright citizenship means that if you're born on U.S. soil, you're a citizen. It's been around for over a century, and it's guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. It's also been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, and there's a federal law passed by Congress.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
A court battle is brewing over President Donald Trump's executive order declaring an end to birthright citizenship. But the CEO of the National Constitution Center says the 14th Amendment is clear.
Ever since the amendment was passed in the 19th century, that's been interpreted to mean that if you're born in the United States, you're automatically a citizen, whether or not your parents are here legally.
The 14th Amendment resulted from overturning the 1857 Dred Scott decision, which denied citizenship to black people and upheld slavery in U.S. territories. The executive order keys in on one phrase in the amendment: subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
They're suggesting that if you're here illegally or your parents are here illegally, they have allegiance to a foreign power, in other words, another government, and therefore that you're not a citizen.
Rosen says trying to end birthright citizenship isn't a simple task.
Basically, the Supreme Court would have to change its mind and reject an interpretation of birthright citizenship that goes back more than 100 years.
The executive order aims to end birthright citizenship for children born after it was signed, but Hiroshi Motomura, immigration scholar at UCLA, says he worries about the thousands of people born before.
That creates a precariousness that I think has a real potential to undermine societal cohesion for many people in this country.
The temporary restraining order issued by a federal judge on Thursday halts the implementation of President Trump's executive order for the next 14 days while legal briefings are held. This is shaping up for what could be the first Supreme Court battle of Trump's second term. In New York, I'm Lee Waldman.
And to help me talk more about that and the latest news coming out of this executive order is Dr. John Acevedo with the Emory University School of Law. And Dr. Acevedo, you yourself study and teach constitutional law, so I did want to bring you into this conversation to talk about this, because as much of a national story as this is, 2 in 7 children in Atlanta have at least one immigrant parent, and immigrants make up 18% of Metro's workforce here. So there's a lot of local impacts that we're seeing in our area, as many states are experiencing. Let's start with the bare basics. What is birthright citizenship?
So birthright citizenship really is the simple idea: if you're born on U.S. soil, you're a U.S. citizen. The very few exceptions are going to be the clause that is at issue, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and that's usually thought to be children of diplomats, who obviously have diplomatic immunity and therefore aren't subject to U.S. laws. So that's really the only group not automatically included. Everyone else, if you're born on U.S. soil, you're automatically a U.S. citizen.
Was this the path that we expected things to go with this temporary ban from a federal, or temporary halt, I should say, from a federal judge, and now 22 states entering lawsuits against this executive order?
I think the only surprising thing is that it's not higher than 22 states. This is a fairly established rule of law in the United States from the 14th Amendment. And really, I think the only surprise is that more folks aren't suing. The speed with which the suits were brought and the immediate injunction, I think, are completely expected.
What are the next steps for the administration? I mean, they have put out this executive order. They've received back that it cannot go into play until some of the legalities are sorted out. What is the next step for the Trump administration?
The next step will be the filing of briefs in the district court, at which point then the judge will likely set a trial date to start this. The interesting part will be to see who has standing to bring the lawsuit. Most likely what we'll see are multiple advocacy groups will bring the suit, plus the states wanting certainty. States also have an interest in this, as you noted. There's students who need to go to school, citizenship, counting, there's many things, an apparatus of the state that they need to be certain that everyone is a citizen of their state.
You yourself study obscenity law and how it has the potential to target minority groups. With an executive order like this, addressing an immigration problem the Trump administration has said is big on their agenda and at the forefront of what this administration wants to do. What can we see play out when we talk about addressing immigration in America?
So I think what we're going to see, and what we've already started to see, are a lot of undocumented individuals throughout the United States, even those with paroles and other documents that say they have a right to be here, becoming very wary. There are stories of folks not wanting to go to the doctors, worrying about dropping their children off at school. And it's really creating a climate of fear among that group. There's also the potential for targeting of minority groups and those who folks think might be undocumented, but who actually went through the process and are documented immigrants, who have gone through the green card process and are naturalized citizens and their children. So I think, unfortunately, the way the president's gone about this, with the rhetoric around it, has created more instability than is probably needed or necessary for this issue.
I'm sure this is a conversation that you're having among colleagues and maybe even with your students. What are the questions that you are hearing as folks try to wrap their mind around the legality of all of this? When we talk about constitutional law and amending that in any way.
I think the two issues that I'm hearing most are what counts as subject to the jurisdiction thereof. For most of us, the easiest way to think about it in my mind is if you speed, jaywalk, commit a DUI, and you can be arrested, you're subject to the jurisdiction of that country. So most of the, if an undocumented person commits a crime, we are going to arrest them and prosecute them for that crime. So the argument is they are therefore subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. President Trump and his lawyers are asserting something more abstract. They're trying to say that if you aren't loyal to the United States completely, and that's through citizenship or proper immigration documents, then your children should not be citizens. Part of the problem with that is it doesn't quite map. If you've fled your home country and come here, arguably you voted with your feet that your loyalty lies to the U.S. So their argument, I think, is more of an emotional rather than a legally based one. Simply because it's so novel. That said, the other argument and discussion that's coming up is, will the Supreme Court side with President Trump? He's appointed several members of the court, and will this kind of novel argument that he's putting forward still hold sway? And really, you need 5 votes of the justices. This court's already proven itself willing to overturn a decades-old precedent with Dobbs overturning Roe. The question is, are they willing to now overturn a more than 100-year-old precedent by ending birthright citizenship rather than upholding it?
You mentioned overturning precedent, and I think a lot of people start to think about Roe v. Wade and really the way that played out with the Supreme Court. Are there any similarities that we're seeing here, even though we are at the beginning stages with an executive order now on hold from a federal judge?
I think the big difference is Roe was really challenged from the day it was passed. From the day Roe was announced, there were folks who were in opposition to Roe. In contrast, birthright citizenship has largely been uncontested for more than 100 years. The case came down in the 1890s, and since then there's been no serious effort to end birthright citizenship. So President Trump's really kind of advancing much more of a novel claim and a newer claim than the folks who wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade.
Any other thoughts? I mean, as we continue to follow this, a lot of legal challenges still ahead. The administration, I'm sure, as you have mentioned, going to put forward what they can to get this executive order through. What should folks look out for, not having the legal background of understanding the nuances of all of this?
I think the quickest is how fast the courts are going to decide. On the one hand, this may stretch through President Trump's entire presidency. To go from a district court hearing to a court of appeals, which will likely be, since it started out west, the Ninth Circuit, to the Supreme Court, could take up to 3 years, possibly a little longer. So this might be something that he has signed and isn't resolved until the waning days of his presidency. On the flip side, we could also see courts confident of the precedent, simply keep ruling against the White House, which would fast track it to the Supreme Court. So I think that's the first thing to look for is how fast is this case going to move? This may be, President Trump fulfills his campaign promise, and now it's going to bog down the courts for his whole administration. It'll also be interesting to see how much it's overtaken by other events. We're in the opening days of President Trump's second term, and there's many other things that he wants to do that will likely draw the attention of his lawyers himself. If he's serious about purchasing Greenland, negotiating treaties with Canada, imposing tariffs, all of those things will likely take much more attention away from this issue. So it'll be interesting to see how much it's pursued by the government if this truly does turn into a months or years long case, which is very likely.
Are there any resources that you could recommend? I mean, there are real families in the U.S. who have been here for quite some time, who have established communities and jobs. Are there resources for them to navigate this if they are an undocumented immigrant or the child of an undocumented immigrant that could potentially be impacted by this?
I think the first thing I would recommend is everyone obtain copies of documents. You should have a copy of your child's birth certificate that you're born in the United States. That would be one of the first things I recommend. If your child doesn't have a social security number, obtain one for the child who's a U.S. citizen. Beyond that, immigration lawyers are likely the best place. There's also agencies. There's many nonprofits throughout the city that will help undocumented persons with the process. But I think if someone wants to do something now, or a viewer wants to act quickly, it really would be obtaining all the necessary documents that you're entitled to have. Everyone's entitled to their child's birth certificate, register with the Social Security Administration, kind of have all that in a row and ready, and copies and duplicates, so that if anything does happen, you have proof of the citizenship.
Dr. Acevedo with the Emory University School of Law, I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and the context as we look ahead to this story as it develops.